All right, welcome into an impromptu Suns today. We were not planning on anything recording today, but unfortunately, Gus Malzahn had other plans for us. News breaking Monday morning that defensive coordinator Ted Roof was let go, and Addison Williams will call the defense. And as media arrived on site to talk to Gus in his normal presser, we learned that Tim Harris will now assume the play calling duties on the offensive side of the football. So two massive, drastic changes for UCF. Obviously, in the midst of a 5-game losing streak, you got to do what you got to do at this point. And it sounds like Gus is certainly taking some heed with that. A subdued, downtrodden presser by Gus today, and some of the players, which is obviously probably pretty fair considering what we're talking about today. But luckily, our Andrew Cherico was on site, had a chance to kind of talk to Gus, take in the sights and sounds, and he's going to join us here on Suns today to give us his perspective on what he learned during the Monday media availability. Let's talk to Andrew. All right, we're back. Emergency Suns today. I'm Adam Eaton. I am with our good friend Andrew Cherico, who's out at UCF today because, a little ho-hum press conference, Andrew, with the Gus Malzahn announcing two pretty big stories today. We'll take the first one first here. Defensive coordinator Ted Roof. His tenure has lasted all of 8 games. He has been fired as defensive coordinator. Andrew, first off, your thoughts on letting Ted Roof go, and what did Coach Malzahn have to say about that today?
I mean, in my perspective from watching sports a long time, usually the first people to go are the coordinators. Those are the first people to take the fall, and the defense was an issue this year. We thought we had seen some improvement in the last few games, Iowa State, Cincinnati, and stuff like that. But against BYU, the defense collapsed once again. They played a ton of minutes. They couldn't get off the field on third down. And Ted Roof is always just an interesting hire because he got fired, or if I'm correct, fired from Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So he was a journeyman, and it wonders at the end of the day, was it maybe a buddy hire by Gus, and maybe he thought since they had that championship experience together that they can bring it back for this UCF team. His blitz system was working at times, but there was just so many inconsistencies that this team had that he couldn't stay on this team.
I mean, listen, Ted Roof had more stops than a Taylor Swift tour. Unfortunately, he's been around the block a little bit. Andrew, the timing is interesting. I mean, Ted Roof did a press conference Sunday night at 6:00. The coordinators meet the media as always. Ted Roof was there, and then this morning, news breaks out that that he's been let go. What are you able to find anything out about sort of the timeline of events and when Gus made this decision and when Ted was notified?
Yeah, we heard it was this morning that the decision was made. Gus came into the press conference, and first he said he made the decision. There was no administrative push. There was no extra internal pressures. It was his decision. He said he felt what the team needed was a change, and he didn't say that he fired him, of course, but
sure,
it was a change needed. He said the team needed a change, and as the head coach in this tough time of college football, that he was the guy who would put his foot down and make that change.
And we're hearing Addison Williams, who was last year's defense coordinator, had been co-DC. He is now taking or reassuming the play calling duties. You had a really interesting kind of back and forth with Gus, kind of asking about Addison's transition back into that role and sort of what he's been doing throughout this season. What did you hear from Gus as you kind of probed a little bit about Addison Williams' role then and what it looks like going forward?
Yeah, so I had the opportunity to ask Gus, what is the confidence in Addison Williams taking back this position after being demoted at the beginning of the season? He said that Addison Williams is a different coach than he was from a year ago. So he's in a different place. And he said that the defense on this team is overall better. He has a great relationship with the defensive players, which is well known. He's never had issues with the defensive players. But it's more the schemes and the packages that he runs. I asked Coach, once again, the all-famous question, shout out to Trace, the distribution of tasks. What was it between Ted Roof, Addison Williams? It was shot down once again. He said that Ted Roof was the defensive coordinator. I couldn't ask anymore. So from my understanding is that Ted Roof was pretty much, I would say 80% in charge of the defense, and Addison Williams just overlooked the little things like the little player personnel and stuff like that. But it'll be a big role improvement once again for Addison Williams. And he struggled last year, the worst rushing defense in the Big 12. So we'll see what changes can be made.
One other thing with Ted Roof, for those who don't know, he was also the linebacker position coach. Any update? I know Gus was asked about who would coach that position group. Any update from Gus yet on who will fill it and coach linebackers?
No, he was asked about the linebacker position, and he said he was going to evaluate that as the week comes.
Maybe somebody on staff. I mean, I know they got a bunch of analysts there, so maybe we'll see that. I will say this for Addison Williams, we had a chance to meet him while we were in Las Vegas for Big 12 Media Day. Gus brought Addison Williams, the only coach he brought with him, by the way, and we had a chance to kind of have some sidebar conversations. And I think Addison told us, kind of in confidence, that he had a bit of a chip on the shoulder as well, based on how things went last year. He alluded to maybe some things he didn't have an opportunity to do, maybe some things he was kind of, stuck with. So curious to see, what that conversation looked like between Gus and Addison, and what Addison will be allowed to do going forward. But no one cares about my opinion or your opinion. Really, what people care about, Andrew, are the players' opinions. You had a chance to have a couple players also at the press conference. I think I saw Matthew Alexander from the defensive side up there. What's been the player reaction to this news that Ted Roof is now out at UCF?
Yeah, the first initial reaction that Matthew Alexander said is everybody was shocked. It's a very surprising thing to have a coordinator get fired, a coach get fired midway through the season. It's not common, especially for this UCF team. Can't remember the last time a coach was fired midway season. But it's very surprising. But they know Addison Williams is a good coach. They're going to run the plays that he calls, and he's familiar with them. The good thing is familiarity. It's not a new guy coming in. He's a guy who's been in this position before, but now we just have to see how he's grown.
I know you're at the bounce house now. We'll all be there on Saturday for the space game. But do you have any update whether or not Braden Marshall or Ladarius Tennyson or Mac McWilliams will be on that field behind you? Because obviously the secondary was depleted as we played BYU. A couple of opt-outs already this season. William Wells, Byron Threats opted out. So very thin in the secondary. Arizona likes to throw the ball around the yard a ton. McMillan's one of the best receivers in the nation. Any update on the guys who may be back this week in that secondary?
No updates. As far as I know, it's a weekly basis. Gus said they're going to try to practice. They're going to see how it goes, and he'll give us an update soon. But for as of right now, no updates.
All right, so that was the defensive news, and we thought that was the big news of the day. And then Gus gets to the podium and also says, oh, by the way, I've given play calling over to Tim Harris. So for those who don't know, Tim Harris, co-offensive coordinator, also coaches the wide receivers. This is his second stint at UCF, was at Miami last year, now first year, obviously, with UCF. I don't believe he's been a play caller in his career, Andrew. Maybe in high school days, I'd have to do some more research there. But what was Gus's reasoning behind giving Tim Harris an opportunity to call plays?
Yeah, Gus told us straight up, it's being a head coach in the Big 12, especially in this day and age, it's a very daunting task. You're spread thin. You have a lot of responsibilities, recruiting, porter, and overseeing all the team. So he just said play calling is one of those things that I have to let go of so I can focus on other aspects of the team. This isn't the first time that Gus has given up play calling. Gave it up last year and ended up taking it back. We'll see how long that Tim Harris remains with the play calling duties. We'll see that if the offense changes at all. I mean, at the end of the day, there's still not a definitive quarterback for this team. There's no quarterback one. They're still figuring it out. So play calling is fun, but who's the quarterback that you're going to be calling these plays with? But for Tim Harris, it's a good opportunity for him. Like you mentioned before, great experience with Gus. He's been around Gus almost his entire career, and we'll see how Tim Harris feels. But the players, on the other hand, they feel confident. They're going to run whatever play is called from Tim.
Yeah, and to your point, quarterbacks, I assume Gus, knowing Gus the way I know Gus, I'm sure he didn't get to the podium and announce the starter today yet. Any idea where he's leaning with the quarterback or when we might know that?
The only information that we received is that Dylan Risk is now in play to be quarterback this week. So he's going to be taking reps. He said they're preserving EJ's red shirt, so I wouldn't expect to see EJ. They said they're still figuring it out, though. So with this team and this current roster, there's no clue what this team is going to be doing. Excuse me, there's some wind. There's no clue what this team is going to be doing at quarterback. But I would say at this point, all four quarterbacks, including EJ, are in play. And Riley Tree, hasn't even been mentioned. So we're still figuring it out. But in terms of who's taking snaps on this team.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because Dylan Risk is a different style of quarterback than you've got with Curry Brown, or obviously we had with KJ Jefferson. So curious what Tim Harris has to play with there. I assume, I don't know if this was asked, Andrew, but I assume, and we don't have time at this point to be installing a whole new system. So I assume Gus will essentially, his playbook stays in place and Harris will just be kind of making calls out of the current system.
Yeah, I bet a lot of the current playbook is going to be used. But like again, they the way to play football is you cater your quarterback system to the quarterback. You cater your offensive game plan to the quarterback playing. So if it's Dylan Risk back out there, you're not going to see a lot of these read options. You're going to see more dropbacks. You're going to see more set passes. So we're still trying to figure it out. But I expect there to be some change, a little bit of change. That's the reason why sometimes play calling is given away, because you just don't have much time to think of creativity in the offensive side of things. So maybe Tim Harris, that being his focus, he can get some things rolling.
And to the same extent of the defensive question, what's been the player reaction that you've been able to gather offensively with this change? How are the offensive guys feeling about Tim Harris now taking the reins?
Yeah, we had the opportunity to speak with center Caden Kittler, and he's gonna, whatever, no matter what it is, he's gonna play the call that snaps. He's gonna be the guy who just receives the play and does his job. There's no current reaction on the team. They weren't able to speak with any of the playmakers, any of the quarterbacks, any of the wideouts. O-line is a pretty set job. You're given an assignment and you follow that. But they're familiar with Tim Harris, and they believe that he'll do a great job.
Andrew, why do you think Gus makes these changes now? 8 games into the season. Why now? Why today do you think that Gus decided that he wants to make these changes on both sides of the ball?
The team is on a 5-game losing streak. There's a lot of pressure, even though he might not admit to feeling the pressure. He's feeling pressure from the fans, probably from the administration. He's feeling pressure from everywhere. And he said that he needed to do what he thinks he's best to make a change for his team and win a game. I asked him what goal is still intact. It's the Pro Bowl game. Bowl game. Is the goal?
I don't think Gus is going to the Pro Bowl. I'm going to call it right now. No Pro Bowl.
Probably not the Pro Bowl, but making a bowl game is still the goal for the season. You mentioned before the goals are still intact after they lost to Cincinnati, but now the goals have shifted tremendously, and now it's bowl game after what we thought was a championship contending team. So the goals are not intact anymore from what he initially said, but now the goal is to make a bowl game, and we have to see. He's making any change possible. I want to say it's a desperation move, but it's a desperation move. He's trying to make anything happen, changing quarterbacks almost every week, firing Ted Roof, now changing giving play calling duties to Tim Harris. So much moving on this team. Maybe the inconsistency is also hurting them.
Take us into the press room. I know you're one of the handful of people there. What was the vibe today? I mean, Gus's demeanor looked a little different. What was the vibe today in the press room, amongst all of the media members there and Gus?
It was Gus's birthday today, so I think.
Happy birthday!
Yeah, we all said happy birthday to Gus as he was walking in. I think he understood that there was going to be a lot of questions asked about his decision and the roster, and it was one of the more. I mean, obviously, after a coach loses, they're or in the midst of a losing streak, they're a little bit more uptight. They're a little bit more defensive to questions as opposed to a winning streak. They're asking about good things. The vibe with the presser is it's what it's been the last couple of weeks. This team is lost right now, and he's just trying to do whatever he can to salvage the team. But it's what can be done. He's trying any means possible.
A few other updates before we let you go. Kobe Hudson, we saw him go down with a knee injury. Only played 1 game against BYU. Any update on Kobe? Any news? Any word on when we might get an update?
Yeah, players are pulling for Kobe. The hope is that he practices this week. But once again, we're very limited on injury information, so we'll probably find out game time if Kobe Hudson's playing, and we'll try to get updates throughout the week. But as long as we know, Kobe Hudson is going to try to practice.
And then last one for you. Obviously, Arizona coming to the bounce house. I mean, again, they're a pretty high-powered offense. What did Gus have to say kind of about facing this team? And does he think that these changes give them a spark, give them some sort of a jolt of energy, perhaps, as they welcome in Arizona to the bounce house to play during the space game, which, of course, UCF undefeated in the space game, Andrew. Does he think that this gives this team the jolt, the spark maybe to take on this Arizona squad?
Yeah, the space game, as you mentioned before, it's undefeated. So we all marked it off as a win on our schedule. Hopefully this year it doesn't change. We all pray and hope that space game continues the undefeated tradition. He said that Arizona has a very high power offense. We know the offensive talent that they have. Their record might not be indicative of it, but it's more when they're not injured, they're a very good team. That's what he mentioned. When they're healthy, they're a good team. And so they're getting players back by the week. And he expects to face a very good Arizona team that's same record as us, struggling just as much as us.
All right. Well, Andrew, listen, our man on the scene, Andrew Cherico, was there for what he thought may be just a regular press conference, and all of a sudden a bunch of news breaks out. Andrew, thanks as always for being there on the scene. I know you've got some things you're going to continue to cut up, so keep an eye on the Suds UCF YouTube channel for more of Andrew's work throughout the day, man. But thanks for hopping in. I know you got a busy day too, by the way. You've also got classes and stuff to do, so enjoy hopefully the rest of your studies. But thanks for hopping in with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on, and we'll keep you guys updated with any information that we get.
Thanks, Andrew.